my name is Lidia, and I have three children. Oh well, as Maria was talking about, she's told me that told you that I have already the education, but we'll talk about that later. Anyway, I have three. Sorry, I have to really readjust myself. I have three children. My oldest one is 18, and she's luckily finishing her high school. She's going to study at university next year. She wants to go to a conservatory of music. And I have two children, and she never was homeschooled at all. So I can see how that develops. So, it's not that we only are homeschooling. And we have other two children. Their names are Daniel and Maria, and my PowerPoint presentation is just a welcoming presentation to our family. So you will see plenty of pictures of my children. And you will get to meet them tomorrow as well, because they're coming tomorrow. Anyway, so the question I'm going to talk today about is, why is it that we educate our children at home? And of course, it's a legitimate question, actually, because many people whom I meet, they ask me, so where do children go to school? And I answer, well, I educate them at home. You can see that their faces change, and that on their faces see that mental picture that I have made already. I have a dungeon in my basement, and the children are chained to the table. Well, or, Bible boys or something like that, without any possibility to communicate. Well, that is not true. My children are quite happy. And moreover, I myself have never thought about being a homeschooler. And I was actually opposing homeschool because I thought it was just some lazy mothers who were doing that. And I was, but ironically, I was educated as a school teacher. I studied 5 years in Russia and then here in Norway, and I got a master's degree as teacher. And I also worked in the public and the private schools. And what happened was that I thought that school is an answer to every educative or social problem that the children might have. So in many ways, I could be mentioned or called as an illustration of what Christian Beck has written in his dissertation, where he says that some people start homeschooling as an answer to to a certain problem that one encounters at school. There was a result of a current situation, and then only later I developed a strong conviction that homeschooling is something which is really good for my children. So before we get to the answer why I homeschool, I have to mention two things. The first one is that as a teacher at school, I could very well see that no matter how hard I tried, no matter how much time I used on those children in my classroom, I can honestly say that there will be always at least one child that I never could reach. I could not meet and address the needs of every single kid in the classroom. It is not possible. So, and it is not possible in most of the classrooms where there are more than, 3, 4, 5, 7 children. If there are like 15 or 20, you have such a big span of ideas, of hormonal changes, of language development, of different things, cultures, that it is very difficult to address all those needs. And then, of course, second thing, which is also very interesting, and that maybe it is difficult to mention it in academia, but I saw that you did that. And the point of love. I mean, seriously, maybe it is very difficult to admit, but teachers who are here, please admit, you don't love my children the way I do. I'm sorry, they don't. Seriously, when I was teaching at school, my goal was to educate those children, to prepare them to become very good citizens of this country, to learn about different things. Yes, but did I love them the way I do love my children now? I have to admit, I did love them. I mean, they were my kids, my 5th grade, my 6th, whatever. But I cannot say that I loved them the way I love my children today. So when the day was over, I didn't remember their problems when I came home, but I went to my own life. They went home, they had their own life. Now, my goal as a teacher, as a homeschooler today, is not merely to do those things, to have well-socialized and well-educated children. My goal as a teacher is to make them, strangely enough, happy. So home education makes my kids, or our kids, free, happy, and equipped for life, which means they are both educated, they're well socialized, or they're learning to socialize, and they become free and happy. And that's the things that I'm going to talk to you about today. And today I'm talking as a person with practical roots, so to speak. So maybe some of the things are very practical. I don't know, maybe or not, but just ask me questions afterwards. So what actually made us leave school? Why did we leave school? We have a son. At that point, he was in the 3rd grade. When he was 4, my son had some language deficiency. When he was 4, the only 3 words he could say was "Mama, Papa, Tractor." Luckily, those words are pronounced the same in Russian and Norwegian, so he did fine. And after a year and a half in the kindergarten or in the daycare that we had, they started inviting a specialist who came and worked with the guy. And he was diagnosed with non-specific language impairment. So despite of the progress he was making, he still was very much behind linguistically. And it was very difficult, and it's still difficult for him sometimes to understand the verbal part of life. And I'll just give you an example. When a couple months before he was supposed to start at school, the teacher gathered all the kids together for the next year, for the 1st grade. And so she was addressing every child. And here's the girl, she's sitting there, and the teacher speaks. She's like, blah, 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 what is your name? And the girl says, Ingrid. So the teacher keeps talking, blah, 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 what is your name? And she's like, oh, how wonderful it is that you came to school. And, she keeps talking. And she comes to the next girl, and what is your name? And she says, Olga. Good enough. And so she keeps talking, oh, blah, 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 how wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And then she comes to Daniel and she asks him, what's your name? And behind all those blahs, he didn't get what he was asked. So he stands up and says, Maria. What an embarrassing moment. I don't know what happened in his little head. Probably he thought he was supposed to give a girl's name. Who knows? But that's what happened, So he reacted the way he saw the other 2 girls reacted, giving just a name out of the blue. So when he did start at school, we talked to the teachers about that problem, and we said, my son has a verbal problem. He doesn't understand what you're saying. You have to slow down and really look him into his eyes, and gave every single word separately so he understands what you're saying. Well, she said, yes, of course, we understand. That's very common, no problem. But what happened was that despite of that she knew that he didn't understand things. She got so upset with him when he didn't follow the instructions. Because what he did was like, so, do you understand? Yeah. So he was like really happy. He understood everything. He didn't do anything because he didn't actually understand. He had this idea that he did, but he didn't understand. So what happened was that the teacher started being bad at him and saying that he is stubborn and that he didn't do because he didn't want to, which is not true. Mostly he didn't understand. And in addition to that, there was a problem with bullying. Because of his language deficiency, it was difficult for him to address the problems verbally. He could not. So he started crying instead of talking. And every time he was in a situation of conflict, he was like really stressing out and crying then. And that made it even worse than it was. So we got everything from jackets in the garbage and sour milk in his backpack and everything. And art destroyed, whatever. And every time we came to the school and said, we have this problem here, they said, oh, right, yes, we know, we have to work with that. We are a totally bullying-free school here. So, right, so obviously it wasn't like that. But what happened that in January, the 3rd grade, was that he comes to me and says, Mama, I don't want to leave anymore. Can you imagine the despair of a mother whose child at the age of 9 comes to her and says that he doesn't want to leave anymore? I mean, like, seriously, this was like a total eye-opener for me. So I thought, what should I do now with my child who doesn't want to live anymore, who sits there all the time like that, never smiles? Really sad. But we also had another kid, Maria. And that was a different situation because she was very good in studying and learning, and she was really fast like that. She was almost 3 years old when she was sitting on the other side of a table when I was teaching my son to read. She was sitting on the side, and she was watching us, how we were doing it. And once I see her holding a book upside down and sounding out what it was saying. So I came out, and I thought maybe she's just like playing, and I saw that she actually was reading that book. So by the age of 3, she read, and by the age of 5, she was reading huge, thick books with chapters, whatever. And not only that, but she also loved to read Daniel's school books, and she was into them and math and solving all the problems. So she was in a state of excitement when she thought, I'm going to school. She said, I'd love to go to school. It was like the source of knowledge. It was, the educational heaven. So, but now can you imagine that? The girl can read, write, whatever. She gets to school, and she needs to sit there with forming the letter A for 2 weeks, while she has done it when she was 3. So I come to the teacher and I say, we have a problem here. You see, my child is already gone through that stage. Can we maybe give her some challenging tasks or something, or maybe even transfer her to the 2nd grade? The teacher said, well, no, you cannot do that because social issues will be really terrible in the 2nd grade because, she's so much younger than the rest of the children. Well, the problem is that when you love math and you're 6 or 9 or whatever, and you're a girl, it's like a social suicide. So really, you cannot be popular and like math. It's not possible. And be a girl at the same time. And anyway, so what happened was that despite of the fact that she didn't have any problems, basically, with the people who or children there, she wasn't bullied or anything, she started to develop very strong headaches and stomach aches. So we went to all different types of doctors. We went to, she was admitted twice to the hospital, but the doctors couldn't find out what was wrong with her. So what happened was that, this is January, I have 2 children. One doesn't want to leave, another is in the hospital every once in a while. So what do? And I called my friend who is homeschooling, and I just started, you don't understand what I'm going through right now. And she says, have you considered homeschooling? And I'm like, right, yeah, no. I don't think it's legal in Norway. And she's like, go check. So I did check, and I found them on the internet, and I started reading about that. And then on Sunday, I just decided to meet those weird people who are educating kids at home. You know how terrible it is when you're meeting somebody who is chaining their children to the tables, as I said. That's what I thought as well. So we take everybody. We take all the family with us, my husband and me. What if I don't see that right? Maybe they're crazy and I just don't see that. So we come to that meeting and we see children who actually are very positively communicating with each other. They're very respectful to each other, very kind and nice kids, and normal kids, not pushy in their communication, very nice kids. And the adults are also normal, which is really strange. So we sit and talk, and then they discuss, we told them about our problems, and they told us what to do, how to get, how to educate at home. And next morning, on Monday, we just took our kids from school like that. We didn't continue at all. So Monday after that, we just took them home. So the result was, those who know Daniel, and maybe you'll meet him tomorrow, they will see that he's a very happy, and positive kid. And Maria's problems gradually disappeared. She didn't have any problems with her stomach anymore after that. So that was also good. But in addition to all those pluses, which is educational, my mom being able to address their educational needs or solving their social problems, there were some other things that I saw which I didn't expect. And the one thing was freedom. And there are different freedoms I'm going to talk to you about today. But one freedom which I would like to point out first is the freedom of being bilingual. Both me and my husband were Russians, and our children do speak Russian. But everybody understands, maybe those who have bilingual kids, you probably know, bilingual families know that whenever kids start at school, unless they have some complementary education, it is extremely difficult for them to maintain their mother tongue. Very difficult. So, despite the fact that there are many bilingual kids in the classrooms in Norway, it seems like Norwegian school is happily unaware that it is multicultural and multilingual. Because the teachers who address the children in the classroom, they address a very homogeneous group. They don't think that the children might think differently. They might maybe address specially, or differently, the kids with different skin color. Then they will see that they're different. But if you are white and go to school, then you are considered Norwegian. So basically, you should think Norwegian, you should act Norwegian, you should communicate or, do whatever in Norwegian. You should read the Norwegian signs or, body language, which you don't actually, because you come from a family who do things differently. And that's one point. On the other hand, the sentence that I'm going to sound out, it sounds really terrible, but the sentence that my children heard so many times sounds like this. This is Norway, and here we speak Norwegian. Every time a brother and a sister got to school and tried to speak Russian, not during the class, during recess, they sit there and they talk, in Russian. The teacher comes up to them and says, now listen to me, this is Norway, here we speak Norwegian. And they've heard it so many times that no matter what the reasons behind that was at the school authorities, social, whatever, it doesn't matter. The result, the consequence in my child's inner self is that being Russian, speaking Russian, is not as valid as being Norwegian and speaking Norwegian. So basically, Russians should become Norwegians, and so should Turks and Pakistani and French and Germans, whoever. Maybe we could make an exception for Americans because they speak the language that everybody understands. So that's the point. So we could, of course, address the notions of cultural capital and how our children have a different cultural capital than the kids in classroom, or the notions of power, or the notion, because that's also what the question we discussed, but it's a big another issue of power. But transnational knowledge, local affiliation, everything we could talk about here, because it is very difficult for a locally grown-up Norwegian to understand that the kid in the classroom might actually have relatives in like 3 different countries. So therefore, homeschooling for us was befreeing in language and culture terms, and we do study things in Russian and in Norwegian. The child is free to read, to write, to watch a movie, to sing a song, or to listen to something, to watch whatever, or code switch in any language he wants. He can code switch. He can speak in Norwegian. He can speak in Russian, maybe even in English sometimes. Not that often, but they do. So now they could choose the language they wanted to communicate in according to the language situation, which was very good for us because we do find ourselves in different learning situations. Which brings us to the next point, the freedom of choosing a learning arena. Because, of course, a learning arena could be a classroom and books. That's what everybody thinks, like you get to school, that's where you learn. But the problem is that, and I will talk about this a little bit later too, but the point is that you cannot just turn on your brain like this, look at 8:30 in the morning, and then turn it off at 3. You never do that. You learn actually all the time. You learn when you wake up and you start learning. When you go to bed, you stop learning probably, maybe not. Maybe you're just still learning something in your dreams. So basically, choosing the learning arena is something that is very important of the freedom that we have. Together with other homeschoolers, we go to different museums and to different places where we can learn and socialize. But also in addition to that, our family, we're very interested in science, so we have arranged different meetings at university. We went to a biology lab and studied fungus there. And the kids got into a real laboratory and worked there in the laboratory. And in addition, we went also and met Dr. Great Stipendiat, who was working on insects, so we learned a lot about insects, so my kids are really keen on that now. So we also visited a painter in his workshop and saw how the painter works, and we also went and saw how a violin is repaired and everything. So like every single place where the child can learn is a learning arena. So that's what we do. And then, of course, it brings us to the next point, freedom to pursue interests. And that's a very clear question, and everybody probably understands that. My son is a musician. He likes music very much. He's 12, and when he was going to school, he never had time to practice. He didn't have time, so this year when he was at school, he had enough time, so he he won a public prize in the Norwegian National Youth Music Competition, whatever it's called. So we were very proud of him. And then my daughter is mostly interested in biology, and she's very keen on doing some experiments and reading books about biology and doing different stuff and working with microscopes and learning about cells and viruses and everything. She's almost finished with a high school book in biology. Now she's 9. Another thing that kids are very interested in is history, so we spend a lot of our time and we plan our time so that we can take them to historical places. And here you can see we were in Cairo and we saw pyramids, but there you can see they're making papyrus with their own hands, and they remember now what it is and how it is made very well. We also, to study Middle Ages, we went to Bergen and to Trondheim, and we learned a lot there. And so it's just history becomes alive when you get to do that. And then another one is, of course, freedom of time. You know that Oslo has a very strict rule. You cannot leave school unless your close relative, God forbid, is dead. Seriously. I mean, if the relative turns 75-year-old, you're not allowed to leave school. If he's dead, here you go. So, I mean, it's... I mean, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to go into that discussion, but still. So, our kids, we went to Kazakhstan, to Baikonur, and we saw how they launched a real rocket from a launching place, and we saw how they, with people in it. So it was really exciting to see how they will do that. And then they got to get into a real landing capsule and to try out and to see what it's made of. And I guess they wouldn't be able to do that if they went to school, because it's about 2 weeks of travel. It's really far. And then there's some other stuff that we were doing, they're diving and climbing and doing other stuff. But of course, freedom does not include only traveling. In some stressful and tiresome days, we maybe sleep in, maybe we relax, and we continue to learn. This learning can include also visiting a relative or a person who lives not far from us, a neighbor, and just sit there and talk about her childhood. Or maybe, going to a library, or just being outside and taking a tour to the woods. So all different types of activities that still are learning for them. And then another issue of time is finishing whatever you've started. Because how many projects my son has started at school and didn't finish? Actually, I want to tell you, the first time he went to the social teacher, to the tilsyn, how would you say it? Evaluation, thank you. So he was evaluated. So the teacher says, so tell me, why do you like homeschooling? He's like, oh yes, I do, I love it. So why do you like it? And I was like, okay, don't tell that you like to sleep in. Tell something else. Well, what he said was really surprised me. He said, I like homeschooling because I get to finish what I started. And I thought, think about that. So he does like it. He likes to start things and to finish them. But, being a teacher, I know myself, like you have 45 minutes and then, between the dropping the book on the floor and picking up the pencils and, and like saying, okay, look at me, I'm talking here. Between all those things, you really lose time. And maybe you do have like 15 to 20 minutes of real education during that little hour. While at home, when you start a project, you just sit there and work on that project. You don't need to turn into the new mode, like, okay, now it's math. We just get to the project and finish it. So that's it. And the books are read, and some ideas come to life. And like, for example, Maria, she made a handwritten magazine for her brother for birthday, like with poems and songs and different stuff, and she had time for that, which is almost impossible when they go to school. And another time issue is, of course, activities, and my kids go to all different types of activities, fencing, and Maria likes science, so she goes to this science club, Forskerfabrikken, and orchestra, they go to orchestras and choirs, so it's like many, many, many different places, which again bring us to the topic of the big S, freedom of socialization, big S. The notion that makes the majority of people whom we meet to react like they do, oh, you have a dungeon with changed kids, is that they think that they're not socialized. Well, let me ask you, what is socialization? If the socialization is that the children sit in one room with people whom they don't have anything in common but their year of birth, then I don't understand something in this life, because no one here in this room actually have only people, only friends they have are the people who are born in the same age, same year as they did. So most of us adults, we realize that the age is not important. What's important is that the friends that you have share your ideas, share your interests and passions. So our friends, we have many friends. For example, we meet together with other homeschoolers and we have different projects of art and different kinds. Daniel's best friend, he just turned 11. Daniel was actually sleeping over at his place today, and they have great relationship. They talk together and play together and everything. But of course, and most of the kids that are friends for our children, they, as I said already, they share the same passions. We have friends from fencing, a club. We have friends who play music and all. And it was funny to see one mother. She came to pick up her son for my son's birthday, and it was bowling club. She came over and she said, how strange, she said, I said, what? Because you have so many different guests. There were children between 8 and 18 years old. They were both boys and girls, and she said that for her birthday, her son had invited his friends, and it was only boys from the same class. So you'd think, poor guy. Seriously, he doesn't get to communicate with others. With girls. How do you communicate with girls? You never learn that. Yeah. Anyway, but another important part of socialization, of course, is family bonds. That's our family. So welcome. These bonds usually get weaker. So that's my husband and his mother and my 3 kids, or our 3 kids. The family bonds usually get weaker because everybody is doing his own stuff. The parents work, kids go to different classes, they have all different activities, they meet only for dinner, if they do, and they never almost communicate. In addition, the kids have to fight for their parents' attention all the time. They have just 1 hour or maybe 2 between they come from the activities and they go to bed. When we're homeschooling, and we're so blessed that I can do that I'm able to do that, and they can come whenever they need to ask something, to have a listening ear, whatever. They don't need to fight. And that means that they don't need to fight between each other either, because they are in a situation of love all the time. So that's what actually is good about that. And also, they learn to communicate between each other in a very loving and kind and respectful way, which is also very important, we think. So that's the freedom of socialization. And then there's some other stuff that I could talk about. I don't know, maybe I have time or not, but the first one is freedom to structure their day. This is something we're working on still, and for now it's me who am mostly, structuring the days. But already for Daniel, it is easier for him to structure because he understands a little more what he needs to study and how, and he can choose the activities he wants to do, and how he wants to, which subjects he wants to study, And one could also ask, maybe that's the same as to give a child a possibility to choose food. And then he will be just sitting there and feeding on sweets, which probably for a while he could. But I can just give you an example that when I took the kids from school, I thought I made a huge mistake. Because I saw my child sitting there, and I was still in my teacher mode. I was giving him some information there, and he was outside the window. He didn't react on anything I was teaching him or telling him or anything. He was out of the window. And I was like, Daniel, I'm here, please listen to me, we're studying here. No. So I thought, I made a mistake here. My child is not learning at home. I have to send him back to school. No, I didn't think that, but we decided to take a break from school at all. So he supposedly, or he thought so, he was taking free from school. He was working with his Legos, and he was watching some historical documentaries and scientific things, and then we were making a weather station together with his sister. It was not learning, right? It was just, fun, but it actually was learning as well. So he realized finally that that's also learning, and was very good. And then, of course, freedom to choose study approaches according to the needs of each child. That's what my freedom is. And I actually wrote like 2 pages of what types of different educational approaches I found out when I was teaching, but it's just practical stuff, and I don't know whether it is interesting. But and then, of course, freedom to live without homework. Think about that. You don't need to think about homework. Isn't it wonderful? because I actually started thinking that maybe I didn't do my work right as a teacher when I was teaching at school, because I also gave homework, and then, thinking that now I don't. What did I article twice? We read it first, and we have a documentary to watch, and then we make something with our hands, and also it's different type. But again, it's practical. And then one which might be a little provocative, and it's freedom to avoid peer pressure. And despite of the fact that, yes, it is very good and wonderful to have, some people do feel like they're fitting in the school, I think that freedom to avoid the 3 toughest years of school, middle school, when the hormonal changes are so big and when the self-esteem is ruined if you get into a bad situation. That's the wonderful freedom that we have. And we want our children to develop a strong understanding of themselves, where they are, what they believe in, what they stand for, and a sense of individuality rather than being formed by a peer pressure around. So I think that's important. Being peer dependent is not something we want them to be. We want them to think themselves and to be able to decide for themselves what they want to do or not. And then, of course, there are more other freedoms that every family could think of, religious, political, whatever. Everybody has their own things which really work for their families. One little issue that I wanted to give you is health issue. Children get adequate rest. You know that today many articles published about how much sleep deprivation children have in that age. They don't have to stay half of the night doing their homework. They just, go to bed in a decent time. They eat well and they eat hot food when they need that, and they enjoy their meals without stress, which is also very important. And then they spend significant amounts of time outdoors. Their eyes and backs don't get tired so much because they can, for example, read laying on the floor or write, like in a different position, not just leaning over their table. So that's different health issues, but basically what I want to say is that even though homeschool is not the only way to give children a good start, we think that it gives a good start to our kids. And if you want to read, I've got a little blog called ushlimama.blogspot.no. It's in Norwegian, and it is about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and a lot of pictures and stuff. So if you're interested, so you can do it. And of course, in Norwegian, as I said, and it's funny because it's actually called the school is good, but it's better at home. School är bra men hemmet bäst. School is good, but it's better at home. But the Google translator translates backwards. Homes are as good as schools, so whatever. So you just, you will see that when you try to translate. It's a Google translator right there. So, thank you.